Welcome to Victim Justice Unveiled, a space where truth is honored, resilience is amplified, and justice is reimagined. Here, survivors, families, advocates, and system leaders come together to navigate the complex path of healing, accountability, and reform. Whether you're watching or listening, thank you for joining us in this journey where voices are uplifted and change begins. I'm your host, Tamara Musolino. Let's begin. Our guest today stood alongside the pursuit of justice, not in the spotlight, but in the quiet spaces where grief meets resolve. As Logan McDonald's girlfriend, she was not legally recognized as next of kin, yet she remained steadfast in solidarity, bearing witness through every step of the process. Logan's family carried the weight of the formal participation. Shelby's presence didn't replace theirs. It stood alongside them with care and humility. She chose to step forward, honoring Logan while supporting the path toward accountability. She stood not in spectacle, but in quiet strength, making it clear to the person who took Logan's life that she was there, a presence that would not fade. She wanted him to know she was there as an unshakable reminder, a living testament that Logan's life mattered and would not be forgotten. Shelby brings a perspective shaped by grief, loyalty, and the quiet strength of showing up when systems fall short. Today, we are honored to hold space for her voice. Welcome to Victim Justice Unveiled. Today, my guest is Shelby Batty. Shelby, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Shelby and I met several years ago. I'll let you go ahead and explain where we met.
I met you in June of 2017, around that time. Maybe it was a couple months after, but we met because my previous boyfriend, Logan McDonald, was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And we met under unfortunate circumstances, but I'm glad to have met you and to have had you by my side during our whole process.
Yeah, I'm glad to have met you too, and thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story through your eyes of what this looked like for you, and hopefully helping others out there that are going through this process.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead and share a little bit about Logan with us?
Yeah, so Logan and I met when I was a junior in high school, and I met him through a mutual friend. And I remember the first time that I met him, he had this light and this aura about him. Definitely unlike anybody I've ever met. He was just the kindest person from the first moment I met him. The type of person that would give the shirt off his back to anybody and everyone. He was a country boy. He loved the outdoors. He loved fishing. He loved the gym and working out. He loved his truck. And he definitely, he loved his friends. He loved his family. He loved his people. That's probably the biggest thing about him. He loved the people in his life. And he especially loved his blue motorcycle that he named Iris, and that was his baby.
Iris. I had no idea that he named his motorcycle.
And so that was him in a nutshell. Just an amazing person that touched so many people. His funeral there was so many people that were there for him because he was there for everybody else. So yeah, just an amazing person. I miss him.
Yeah. He's gone way too soon.
Way too soon. 19 years old. Yeah. way too young.
So much life to live still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a light and somebody that he just impacted so many people. Yeah, we all miss him dearly.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing Logan's story and helping us walk through what that process looked like for you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to get into it.
In June of 2017 is when Logan was killed. And that individual was prosecuted, and we learned that he had a blood alcohol level of 0.24, I believe.
Yep.
3 times the legal limit.
Yep. Yeah.
Can you share with the audience what that looked like for you and what you wish people understood about that?
Yeah. So he died the day after my 18th birthday. And I remember getting the news, and I was just told that he had been in a crash. I didn't know for what reason. And when I learned that it was a drunk driver, it kind of hits you that, like, I would have been devastated if he had, crashed and there was nobody else involved. Obviously, that would have been devastating, but it adds a whole nother layer when you know that somebody else, in my opinion, intentionally did something to harm him. And I think that's the part where I started to become really angry and confused because I grew up in my world, like, you just don't do that. You just don't drink and drive, especially when there's so many options to get home safe. And then when I started learning about his prior convictions and that he had a suspended license and that he was driving his boss's truck, that's when I really started to connect the dots that this person had done this before. This was, he knew the consequences of doing this, and he did it again, and it ultimately took somebody's life. And I think, I've really battled with those feelings of, trying to get past that anger. I think to this day, I'm still battling with that and those feelings. And I've talked to other people that have lost somebody to a DUI, and they talk about, forgiveness and moving on and forgiving that person. And I just don't know. I can move on from the anger and let that piece of me go, but I don't know if I can forgive. So that's something I am still kind of battling with. But yeah, it was one of the worst days of my life, finding that out. And yeah, I still to this day cry about it because it was just the worst pain I've ever felt. Worst pain I've ever felt, by far.
Yeah. My heart goes out to you because I remember when we met, and gosh, just you're so young, and Logan was so young and had so much ahead of him, and for someone to make a decision, to do something that can cause harm and did cause harm, and it wasn't the first time, which I think is even the more difficult piece to swallow, probably.
I think that part is super difficult to move on from, but
there's so many layers too. I've witnessed in vehicular collisions when they're DUIs, right? There's so many levels that come into play. It's the alcohol level. There's, driving with a suspended license. And so DMV has a process that's an administrative process. And there's so many levels that walking through the criminal justice process is just one little piece of it.
For sure. Yeah. Yep.
That it gets really complicated.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And we were so young when all this happened. I even think about, not just me, but Logan's friends and Logan's family. There's so many pieces to it, even witnessing other people suffer from his death. that's like the worst part. It's like you're, in a way, you're having to watch the devastation kind of ripple through a community. And so, and I look back at pictures of him and I, and it feels like just a totally different timeline, totally different story, a totally different person, because we were so young, yet it still feels like it happened yesterday. So, yeah.
A year after he was killed, his perpetrator, Marcus Gifford, was convicted.
Yes.
And there was a sentencing. What did that look like, and how did that feel moving through that piece?
Yeah, I think the whole process was kind of a whirlwind. I was walking into it not really understanding the whole, process and how court worked. I remember coming into it, though, with this like fiery passion to just take up space in that courtroom, though. And I think from the start, like, I felt so out of control with what happened. Like, this person took something away from me, from his family, from his friends, and there was nothing that any of us could do about it. And when you're in that, you just feel so helpless. And so for me, standing in that courtroom every single time, no matter how painful it was like taking my power back for me. It felt good to be like, yeah, you're going to see my face every time, you're in here. You're going to see the devastation, or you're going to feel it behind you. And, I think going into it, it was a lot to, especially the first time I saw him in court. That was really, because I didn't know really his age. I knew, his name a little bit, but I kind of walked in blind the first time I went to court. And to see him, it was so like, that's the person that took my loved one away. And then throughout that process, we had a lot of support, and especially from Placer County, so much support. And I'd love to dive into the amazing things that Placer County did for Logan in this case. But sentencing that, a year later, and that's another thing to talk about, is how long it takes to get somebody sentenced.
And that a year is actually not that long for a death case.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. We were actually quick. But at the end of it, I remember we had a meeting with the DA talking about where we were going to go with things. And I remember there was debate, and we were asked, do you want to go with gross vehicular manslaughter or murder? And I remember half the room being like, yeah, let's get him, like, that's what we want to go with. But at the same time, we were being informed on the other half that if we did go that route, he would be, released if he ever did it again. And it wouldn't be on his record. And so it kind of pushed us to go with that gross vehicular manslaughter charge. And even though some of us weren't really, I think, ready for that. And sentencing, when it came down to it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got the max for gross vehicular manslaughter.
Yeah.
Which, now that I'm in this world of advocating for victims of DUI, I now understand that that's actually sometimes rare.
Very rare.
Very rare. So I guess we got lucky in that regard.
Well, and I think it's interesting, too, because you talk about the two different paths, and I'm not an attorney. Just work with them.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that one path, when an individual is released from custody after they go to prison, that the charges will always remain on their record, but they'll have supervision upon being released, where the other way, they wouldn't have supervision. They would just have done their time, it would look like, their next offense would be just a straight DUI, they wouldn't be able to be charged with something more significant.
Got it.
is
Okay.
my understanding.
I think now that you're saying it, that's exactly what I remember it being, and I think that's why we went with the other option. Which, like, looking back on it, I'm glad that we did, because I think there was more risk with the other one. But there's a part of you that's just like, especially me. It's like I see that as murder. It's hard for me to not see it any other way.
And it's interesting how our legislature determined that that wasn't
Yeah.
murder.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
Yep.
piece to bring up because I
Yeah.
think, when you take someone's life,
Mm-hmm.
I can understand if you're, driving down the road and something jumps out at you and you swerve to avoid it and collide into someone else. That's,
Yeah.
you're
Yep.
not purposely getting behind the vehicle after
Exactly.
consuming something that
Yeah.
is illegal.
Yep.
And you're not making those decisions
Yep.
to take someone else's life in your hands when you get behind the wheel.
Exactly. And I think like we've all, gone through the DMV process and gotten our license, and we read those, those rules, and we know that that's not, at this point an okay thing to do, and how dangerous it is. So,
Especially with all the different avenues, like you talked about earlier with
yeah.
Uber, Lyft. I
Yeah.
mean, there's probably a million others,
Yep.
but I mean, just to name a few, and
Yep.
they're out there.
100%.
Use them. You don't
Yeah.
have to
Yep.
endanger yourself or others.
Or just even, calling a friend. It's like there's so many, we're so connected now. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
And, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they talk about how DUI is a 100% preventable crime. And I really do feel that way. So that's how I kind of see, the verbiage in terms of the laws, because it's all, I guess, perspective. So, and that's my perspective on it.
Yeah.
But
That's your experience.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
yeah, so
So when the sentence came down and you realized what he was being sentenced to, how did that feel?
I think like at that point, I don't really know if I felt anything. I think I felt like the injustice because even in that moment, I knew that I didn't really see it as like, oh, he accidentally hit him and he was sober. So I didn't really, I didn't really like that part of it. But I also knew like that's kind of just how the way this works. Like there's nothing I really don't feel like I'm in control. Because the laws are in place and they're going to fall where they may. And that's the unfortunate part. And I think the lack of feeling like there's control in that. That's where for me I felt like having the support system of our team, having you as our victim advocate was so helpful because at least it felt like somebody cared. At least it felt like somebody was holding on to you through this just roller coaster of, mixed emotions and feelings. So, yeah, I wouldn't say I was totally happy with the sentencing, but I was also really happy that he got the max for what it was. And, everybody did the best that they could with the way the law is written,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of my feelings on it.
And then you were given an opportunity to make a statement
Yes.
at sentencing.
Yeah.
It's something that's called a victim impact statement. And most people choose to do that. And, everybody feels differently in doing that and have a different perspective on, what that will do in their mind. Is that going to help them? So you're given an opportunity to do a victim impact statement. And many people choose to do that as a form of whether it's a way to finally speak up in court and share your thoughts about the outcome of the case or, what you've lost. What did that look like for you?
I'm really grateful that I got to have a victim impact statement because I wasn't, next to kin. So the fact that I was even able to get up there and say something to this person meant the world to me. It was a very powerful moment for me. I think, writing it all, I think there's a lot of confusion in like what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. I know that there was a lot of things that I wanted to say. I just didn't put them in there. But, being able to have that assistance to kind of walk through really helped. I think, when I was finally up there saying the words that I needed to say, I think there was a piece of me that still felt like maybe just things weren't registering. I think at that point, like, things were already made, things were already discussed. Like, at that point, it was just a moment for me to kind of have what I needed to say to him. I don't think really any of it registered, and I mean, evidently it didn't. But it was really important for me to have that moment, and I'm glad that I did. And it gave me, again, just a more sense of just power within myself. Like, I'm able to say these things to you, and it made me feel better, in a situation where I felt really bad for a really long time. So
Yeah.
I was grateful that I got that moment. Yeah.
I'm glad that that's something that our legislation with Marcy's rights,
Yeah.
passed and made it a part of our Constitution, that is something that victims are allowed to do. And they can be so empowering
Yeah.
for victims. I remember going to a training and hearing from a child who had lost their mother in a synagogue. And the mother was praying at the time that she was murdered. And her daughter got to say a victim impact statement when that individual was sentenced.
Wow.
And the daughter got to say the prayer that the mom was saying.
Oh,
And she was murdered
gosh.
while she was murdered. And so to me, that was such a powerful moment
Wow.
where that perpetrator of the crime, the murderer, had to sit there in court
Yeah.
and hear every word.
Yep.
It was a hate crime, but at the end, they had to sit there and listen.
Yep.
And so what you said about, individuals hearing what you're saying, is it going to fall on deaf ears or not?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yep.
But I know the one thing with vehicular crimes or DUIs that we used to talk about also is when you're giving that statement in court, there are other people listening, other people in the
Yes.
courtroom.
Yep.
And if the perpetrator of the crime, if it's falling on deaf ears, you have a whole courtroom of people who are hearing what you're saying.
Yep.
And, hopefully they'll take that home with them
Yes.
and not choose those kinds of behaviors again, because that was a DUI court. So most of the people that were in there
Yep.
had perpetrated that crime of driving under the influence. So
Yes. Yep.
for them to hear your words, hopefully touched and changed one of their lives, if not more than one.
I hope so. I think, being in that environment too. And now that you're bringing it up, like being in DUI court, there were so many other DUI offenders, and hopefully being able to witness that, like the worst consequence that could happen from a DUI. Hopefully that turned things around maybe for other people. That's the hope.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day,
It's such an interesting process too, because I know that, even from the start, when someone's arrested for a DUI, right, what that looks like versus someone that goes out and commits murder, you're going to probably stay in custody.
yeah, yep, yep,
And you're not going to be released. But, DUI has a completely different, they call it a bail schedule for the judges to follow when determining how much it's going to cost them to get released from jail. What's the bail going to be?
yeah,
Murder, no bail.
yeah,
Vehicular homicide, I don't know. Are we going to let him out and then have him wear a device to where they can track
yeah,
the alcohol intake?
yep,
Are they going to be allowed to drive? Are they going to have their license taken away? There's so many different layers
yeah,
when it comes to that. And so it's just calls that I would get all the time. Well, how did they get released? They just killed somebody. What?
yeah,
And the court has to follow the law
yep,
that's in place.
yep,
So does the sheriff. So does any arresting officer or deputy.
yep,
So that
yep.
complicates things.
It does. And there's those pathways that need to be followed that way. And sometimes as the victim, it's so hard to be so confused by why those pathways are set the way that they are. Because, and sometimes those really intense ones, those intense DUIs that end up taking a life. Like, in my opinion, they're a little too lenient in some directions. So, yeah, it's a tough thing to maneuver. I'm sure on either end, even on the other side of things, it can be tough to witness things that, maybe if you're in that environment, you don't believe should go that way either, but you have to abide by them. So, yeah.
So in June of 2018, he was sentenced to prison for 10 years, which was the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Then 2020, we found ourselves in the midst of a pandemic.
Yes.
COVID had played a key role in a lot of changes.
Yeah.
One being the Department of Corrections, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, was trying to minimize the capacity of their prisons. And we find out that Marcus Gifford had been released early.
Yes. Yeah. Which was a huge shock and a huge blow to, I think, everybody. I don't feel like anybody felt like that was enough time at all. And it was really hard to know that, like, this thing that's happening in our society is what's going to lead to his early release. And it was definitely did not feel like we got an ounce of justice. And ended up doing some research behind it, and CDCR released over 15,000 people from the prisons during that time. And they stated, the head of the CDCR stated that they released criminals that had performed non-serious or non-violent crimes. And for me, that was so infuriating because Marcus had literally killed somebody, and they're considering that to be not serious or not violent.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I've always found that interesting.
Yeah.
When it comes to our laws and the punishment. What's interesting is that you have laws that are non-violent, but they've been changed to that. What were they before they were changed? Like, why did we decide to change something so violent as a death to non-violent? I don't understand.
I don't understand it either. It's mind-boggling to me.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's like, you're the head of the CDCR and you're stating that to the public. Like, you're now putting out into the world, oh, the DUI is not that serious. DUI is not that, violent. And, like, that's putting that, continuing that idea out into society that this is not something to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
This is somebody taking a loaf of bread from a grocery store.
Yeah.
It's like, I just, they're not the same. So that was really hard to, I think, probably overall, it was to get that letter and to be told that that was happening.
Yeah.
Even over, all the court stuff, because it was definitely like you get no justice out of this, So yeah, I think that was a tough time. And I think we had to just deal with it the way it was. There was nothing we could do. So, yeah.
And then to find out that he had committed another DUI just shortly.
Yes.
I mean, within weeks, if not months after
Yep.
being released from CDCR.
Yep.
So he repeated yet again.
Yep.
And he had committed a DUI before he killed Logan. He had committed a DUI.
Yes. In fact, I think it must have been only one. I think he only committed one before that. But he had a suspended license and an interlock device on his car. So that's why he was using his boss's vehicle to get home. Yeah, he definitely had priors to this. He definitely had a pattern of this. And just a couple months after being released, he was caught again in Roseville, drinking and driving. And, another thing that the DCR came out with and said is, we're releasing criminals that we don't think will reoffend. And a quarter of those criminals reoffended within 3 years of being early released. So,
Yeah.
and it's clear as day that that's what happened in our case.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that he didn't kill anybody. But it just goes to show that, like, he should not have been released, you know? Yeah. So that was another, to have that letter and then that as the aftermath, another offense, was brutal. Yeah. It was infuriating.
I remember getting spreadsheet after spreadsheet, tons of cases or inmates that had been convicted in Placer County. And one of my jobs during COVID was to call people or notify people that these individuals on these spreadsheets were getting released from CDCR, and they were of all types of crimes. And, the thing with crime is that the punishment is one thing, right? So 10 years CDCR, but then CDCR has a calculation that they do of credits that they put into play as well. Well, this person gets so many credits for this and so many for that. And no one knows what that formula is.
Yes. Yep.
But on top of the credits, COVID came along, and then we end up in this situation. And, it's not, he wasn't the only one released. There were so many people released. And if one person, this is just one person committing these multiple crimes, how many other people out there have been affected by what was done?
Yep.
And feel powerless to do anything to change that.
There was a lot of people, I'm sure, that were affected by that early release just as much as we were. Yeah. It's so hard.
So frustrating. So he picked up another DUI.
He did.
There wasn't a person involved in this DUI. And so technically, you guys weren't considered victims, Logan's family. And we were still able to, thankfully, Placer County, the court system allowed you to participate and be a part of those hearings.
Yep. Yeah, which was really nice because once again, we were in a space of there's no justice. And I think that, like, for me was like the biggest draw for going in every single time, even in the second round, because it was like, there's no justice. I'm going to stand here. I'm just going to make myself known. And I'm going to be present. And I guess it was almost like, for me, like a haunting of sorts. Like, I want you to see me. I want you to know that, like, you destroyed somebody, a young person, and I look back at, like, my previous self, and I have a lot of emotion for that person, and it feels so far away now, and so different, but she was just looking for a way to kind of just get out of the feelings that she was feeling and make an impact on somebody that really hurt her. I think that was my way of doing it. And so being able to go in the second round and just take up space again was really nice. It was hard though too, because the second round we had some, you're out in this hallway right before DUI court, and you're sitting amongst, DUI offenders and their family. And Marcus's family was in the waiting room. And the way they acted this time was a lot different than during the case before when he killed Logan. And so we heard some things that I think hurt us during that.
What were those things that you heard? Did you hear? You want to share?
I can. His mother was there, and she was speaking with, their person representing them, and she looked at him, and he's like, it's fine. We'll make sure we're going to get him off on a technicality. And my mom and I looked at each other because I was like, I can't believe I just heard that. Like, it's so hard to imagine the lack of accountability from family. It's like, this is the second time that there's no accountability at all, or any, like, I know if I had a son that did something like that, those are the consequences that you're going to unfortunately meet. That's your choice. So I guess, like, those things also continue to put out there that like, oh, it's not that serious. We're just going to get you off. We won't worry about this. And so it's just so frustrating. And it's so hard when you're in that hallway and you're around that and you have to just sit across from them. I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about either, is that part's just as tough to go through that as well. And then you go into the room and you're met with the person that, took your person away. And yeah, but I was grateful to, again, just be there and just be a face for Logan, be a voice for him. Yeah.
I can't, you're talking about the courtrooms or sitting outside in the hallway, and it's such a hard place to be
Oh my gosh.
for so many people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so many people that are waiting to go into court who, are the people that are being prosecuted are out there having a great old time.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is like, and it's, I walked in the first time I went to court and I had no idea that that's how it was set up. No idea. And then I met with this hallway and like, there's half this hallway that's just, you can tell is just devastated. And then this other side that's just, this is just another day. And they're just they're just going through the process.
Yeah.
And so that can be hard to witness just as much as, sitting in the actual courtroom itself. Yeah. So
And with a family who's basically enabling that behavior, that repetitive behavior.
Yeah.
By not giving them accountability or not
Yeah.
making sure they're held accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. Most tough.
So after his release in 2020 and his newest DUI, he was convicted of felony DUI and went away for 6 years to CDCR. And in 2025, March of 2025, this year, there was a news story. I remember seeing it on ABC, I think it was Channel 10, talking about an individual, and there was a kidnapping, police pursuit or a police chase, and carjacking. And then ultimately that individual ended up taking their life in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah.
And I later found out that individual was the person that had taken Logan's life.
Yeah.
And so getting released yet again early, only to perpetrate additional crimes, and how many other people were affected. I mean, in a chase.
Yeah.
A chase with law enforcement. How dangerous is that for everyone that's on the roads?
For sure.
Not to mention the carjackings or attempted carjackings that were reported.
Yep. It was a serious event. Yeah. And that happened just this last March 2025. And when I heard the news, I was, I wasn't going to be shocked if he had committed another DUI, but this was there was a lot of stuff going on during that whole crime spree that he went on.
His crime definitely escalated.
For sure. Yeah. It got worse.
Yeah.
So, I guess he kidnapped a woman in Roseville and then forced her to drive him up to Reno. And so they drove all the way up there, where he got out and he carjacked another man in a truck, and all by gunpoint.
Which he shouldn't have had to begin with.
Exactly.
Right? So he had a gun illegally.
Yep. And he took that truck and went on a high-speed chase with police until he crashed into a tree. And then when he was surrounded by police, he took his pistol and ended his life. And just a crazy ending to an even crazier story. Yeah.
Just another ripple effect of his harm
Yep.
to society.
Yep. And Morgan Geyer called me the day after it happened, which was just the nicest, kindest thing. It was so nice to have literally Placer County reach out and tell me the news. I was really grateful for that. And then it was so weird because I was left with such a weird feeling and I wasn't expecting it. A couple months before that, September 2024, I had gotten a message on Facebook, and it was in my unread folder. And it was Marcus reaching out to me. And he wrote me a message, and he said something like, "Hey, Shelby, give me a call whenever you get the chance." And then he put his number down. And then he also friend requested me on Facebook. And I remember I sent it to Rhonda, who works for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and I was like, what do I do with this? And I was already feeling like I wasn't going to respond to it. I didn't really want to know what he had to say. It was either going to be an apology, which I really didn't want, or it was just a way to get a hold of me because I was so involved in court. I'm not sure what it was. I'd like to think that he had good intentions, but I just don't know. And I didn't actually end up reading that message until way later, after his crash, about 2 weeks after his suicide. I didn't read that message till 2 weeks after. And that was such a surreal feeling to see that he had reached out and tried to get a hold of me. And he was already gone. And it sucks because I'm a huge mental health advocate. And I, through the grapevine, found out that he was dealing with some pretty intense mental health issues. And so there was this back and forth for me of like, I was, finally kind of felt like justice was there, and in a way it's like an eye for an eye. At the same time though, I've had like a little bit of space in my heart for somebody struggling mentally. Where it ends for me is, because I know there's so many of us that struggle with mental health issues. For me, it ends when your mental health issues start to, spread into possibly harming other people. And so for me, that's kind of where my conclusion lies, is your mental health spread into other areas that affected other people and ultimately took somebody's life. And I'm sure he used alcohol to probably cope with that. But for me, that's where my sympathy stops. So yeah, weird feelings, and but in a way, a conclusion to what happened. And yeah, that's been, I mean, even up till, it's been almost 8 years now, and there's still so much, happening to this last year. So yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's just one individual. I mean, how many others like him are out there?
Yep.
How many other people like you have had this kind of experience? And, what can we do moving forward to change this for other people so it doesn't continue to happen?
Yep. That's the goal, is to, kind of work to make future change, because if we just leave it at how it is, it's never going to change. I read this statistic. California has some of the most lenient DUI laws, and it really shows. It really shows in our reoffenses, and things need to change in order to, get things to be in a better spot. And I'm noticing now that I work for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, just how much room is left for offenders, and how much space and opportunity they give them, and not the victims. And that's also really hard to see. I'm seeing a lot of leniency in prosecuting, and the amount of time that they're spending in prison, and it's really hard to watch. Yeah.
Such an interesting caseload. When working in the DA's office, having vehicular crimes or DUIs, and oftentimes it's the newest of new prosecutors handling those, obviously supervised by someone who is well versed, right? But that's kind of where, at least the two counties that I worked in, Placer and San Joaquin, that's where their baby DDAs cut their teeth on cases like that. And so, if it weren't for someone like the prosecutor that handled
Yeah.
Logan's case, who really understood and knew the laws. I mean, that I can only imagine in a bigger county
Yeah.
where you don't have the connectivity that you do here in Placer,
Yes.
what that might have looked like.
Yeah.
And so, statewide, what is that looking like? And so
Yeah.
no wonder, you see on the news every so often,
Yep.
vehicular collision or a DUI death, multiple offender.
Yep.
And, we've got to do better.
We really do.
Just got to do
We
better.
really do. And it needs to be like my biggest thing, like when I talk about like what can we do to change is literally like changing the way we like as a society view DUI. Because it's just, still such a people joke about it. People don't take it that seriously. And it really boggles my mind. I really battle with that, I think, more than anything, because it's so serious to me even before this case happened. So I think that's the biggest thing that needs to also shift is just the perception of the crime itself. And if so many if so many people switched their mindset on how they view it, I think there would be more room to create that change within our laws and, in other areas of the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, I'm much, much older than you are. And I grew up in a time where it looked a lot different. It wasn't, I think it was called drunk driving, not DUI.
Yeah.
And you could, your blood alcohol level was a lot higher. And a lot of people, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
You go socialize, you drive. It's not a big deal. You get home, hopefully safely and not hurting anyone. But the younger generation and, for years, people have been educated that this is dangerous. Just like, you get in a car, you put on your seatbelt now.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, wasn't a thing. You didn't have to wear a seatbelt.
Yeah.
But we now know that not wearing a seatbelt is dangerous.
Yeah.
So we wear a seatbelt. So,
Yeah.
I mean, not drinking and driving, there's so many avenues to choose.
Yep. And like in today's day and age, it's crazy the amount of options that you have. And so it just, again, that also boggles my mind is like, how is that not where your brain goes to first? I know that, even in the 1980s when like MAD was founded, they did so much work to try to change that mindset. Because before that, it was so even more socially acceptable. And I think today we're even still trying to get out of that. It's very rooted in, our entertainment and our society. And it's just trying to change that perspective within people. And we're working towards it. Yeah, that's the goal.
Do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about some of the support pieces and the places or the things that helped you process Logan's murder?
Yeah.
I'm just going to call it a murder
Yeah.
because that's what it should be called.
Yeah.
And what that looked like for you. Are there any avenues that helped that might be helpful for other people or just in general what that looked like for you?
So at the start, I think when it immediately happened, I wasn't ready to just go right into therapy. I think for the immediate support, leaning on family and friends was everything. I had two of Logan's best friends and mine to this day. They moved into my house and they lived with me and my family for 7 months. And they were there every single day. And I can't even, I thank them for my life. They literally saved me during a time that I was my weakest. And they both were just that light and that bubbliness and that place for me to go and like relate and talk. And we were able to go do fun things together. Like, let's just go get out of the house and let's not just sit inside. And they were able to bring that to my life for the first 7-8 months where it was toughest. And I'm so grateful for that. Um, I have a huge place in my heart for them. And then my family, just the people around me, like surrounding myself with people was so huge. It was huge. And it needed to happen for me to be, in that place where you're just so out of body for so long, it feels like. And I was so stuck in time. Like I didn't feel like I was moving forward. And it just gave me a place to connect with people and create new memories and good stuff, during a really rough time. So for me, that's my biggest advice when something happens like that. Even if you like don't have family or your friends, just reach out to community even.
It's interesting you talk about, where you were in that time frame, 7 months after. So, Logan's murder was sentenced a year after. So we were working together during that time frame. And I just remember this really determined and strong young woman coming into court all the time. And
Yeah.
I guess maybe in that moment you were, putting that face forward.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think it's important for people like me, like other advocates, like
Yeah.
other law enforcement officers or people in the system to
Yeah.
understand that,
Yep.
what you see isn't necessarily what's really going on behind
That's so
closed
important.
doors.
That's so important. Yeah. Because that's totally what it was for me. I felt like I had to be in my power in those moments. But at home, I was like falling apart. And yeah, you put on a total face when you go into court. I was a totally different person. And then outside of it, it was just trying to survive, getting day by day. I remember saying to my mom the day after he died, I was on the couch and I think I had one sock on and I had my pajamas on. My hair was a mess. I was just in a horrible spot. And I remember saying to my mom, I just can't wait for it to be 5 years from now so I don't have to feel this like intense pain. And it's more than 5 years from now, and you're out of that super dark pit, but that stuff still lingers. It's still there, and in order to get like out of the pit itself, it kind of just feels like it's survival for a while. Like it really is just like I gotta just get day by day through this, and that's what it was for a while. And in court gave me the ability to I felt so weak at home processing things. Court gave me the ability to be stand in my power a little bit more and feel like I was making a difference. And even though it was kind of all in my head, even so that was the immediate for me. Extending past that, I started therapy probably a year after or so, maybe a little bit before that. I'm not sure when I started therapy. And I had the Cal BCB benefits. And I went to see a counselor, which really, I had a hard time getting appointments with her. I can't really say it did too much for me for a while. I had more luck with my own resources, books. I read a lot of books about grief. I even took classes like in college, stuff like that, online classes. Stuff like that really kind of helped me understand the process and the stages of grief. And then after that, I kind of stepped more into community support. So in 2021, I started volunteering for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I just kind of reached out to them just in a way. And I think in a way, I started working at MAD. It was about 4 years after he had died. And I was in this place where I started to feel like I was losing him. I don't know if that makes sense. Time passes, memories are moving, and I felt like I was losing my grip on the person I loved. And I think it was my way of trying to keep him here. That's originally why I started volunteering. As well as I was super passionate about it. But I noticed that the more I started to show up at these MAD events and connect with people and tell my story, the more I was just healing myself, it did the opposite of what I thought it was going to do. It instead of keeping that grief and holding on to all that stuff, it really let it go, and in the best way possible. I'm so thankful for the things that Mad has done for me. They have amazing monthly free grief support that I went to for a while. And so I'd go in and, talk to other people that had gone through the same thing I had. And that was an amazing support. And just getting involved and being around people that see you was everything. And it was that last piece that I really needed to move on. And it was amazing. And now I work for them. It's full
Come
circle
full
moment.
circle.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's such
So
a great place for you to be. I can only imagine what your work is going to look like for them moving forward.
I'm
And such
excited.
an empowerment piece, too.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels good to be knowing I'm helping other people. I've met so many amazing people with horrific stories along the way of volunteering with MAD. And to be able to now be in a place where I feel like I can help them is everything to me, because it's such a dark place and it can be so lonely. And to be that support, it just makes me feel so good to be that person.
I'm glad you found them. I
yeah.
mean, the thing with the criminal justice system is it doesn't wait for you to heal,
Yeah.
for you to go through it and
Yeah.
understand it.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
you're trying to learn
Yep.
a foreign language,
Yes. Yep.
basically,
Yeah.
while going through grief when you can barely put one foot in front of the other.
Yep.
And, unfortunately, you're not always given the support needed due to time constraints mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, because, gosh, Logan's case started and ended criminally in a year.
Yeah.
That first anniversary alone, right? Like, how traumatic is that for most people?
Yeah.
And to be in the middle of a criminal justice process or having that just concluding, being so close to that,
Yeah. Yep.
how are you going to understand what the prosecutor's telling you and what the judge is saying?
Yeah. You can't take it all in. And at that time, too, you're so out of body and you're just kind of moving through the motions. You don't even have any time to really focus on yourself or what you're feeling or what's going on. You're just in a tornado. Really, it's the best way to describe it. At least that's what it was for me. So yeah, yeah, that's really how it feels.
So now you're walking that
Yeah.
path with other people that
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
found the place to get to be healed.
Yes.
That healing moment with Mad. And
Yeah. I'm very grateful for them. And yeah, it's been a really amazing thing to connect with those people. I'm so passionate about this now and being able to, move forward and hopefully enact change and steer people into the direction of viewing this as a serious crime. That's the whole goal. So yeah, I'm grateful for where I'm at now. And there's so many resources available, especially with MAD. There's so many options. We are so victim, we stand by victims. And we'll go to court with you. We will, grief support, mental health support. There's so many great resources out there for people. And so being able to supply that is just, it's awesome. It's a full circle moment for sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So now that you've come full circle and you're working with MAD, I know that in Logan's case, there wasn't a lot of media around his collision and what that looked like, which my experience is probably a good thing. Because I know I've worked with a lot of families whose last memory of their loved one is that crash seen on the news or reported, in some fashion, whether it's through social media or, or regular news stations. Have you walked that path with other survivors and what that looks like?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that tends to be, I think the media likes to sensationalize and grab people's attention, and unfortunately, they do that on the backs of victims oftentimes. And so, they'll post, these victims' worst moments of their life. And oftentimes they're having to witness, pictures of the crash or pictures of the scene, pictures of just stuff that they shouldn't have to see or come across. And sometimes they come across it by accident. They don't know that it's happening. And there it is on the news for everybody to know about. And in our case, we were really lucky in that. I think we were really protected in that. There was a couple things I think that got out through a company that was taking care of the vehicles involved in the crash. But other than that, we didn't have any news outlets posting anything, and it gives the privacy, to victims to just have that to themselves and not have it be such a public thing. Because I just think that's, depending on the size of the, event and how intense it was, maybe people start to recognize you by name, or, oh, you're that person that went through that. And maybe you don't want to have those types of conversations. It just opens doors that maybe the victim doesn't want opened. And I think it's such an important thing to talk about and to really protect those moments for victims, because it's such a vulnerable time that you're in.
Yeah.
It's such a vulnerable position, and you're just, again, in that tornado. And, it's just one other thing that you just don't want to add to the plate.
Yeah.
So,
And to have that as a last memory for a lot of people.
Exactly.
To see that image stuck
Yep.
in your mind, and
Yep.
maybe you didn't go to the scene.
Yes.
Maybe you learned of it,
Mm-hmm.
but later see the scene and the crash site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know, for me, much later, I saw a picture of Logan's bike after his crash, and I can still picture it in my head right now. And that was many years after the crash happened. But I can't imagine seeing that right off the bat. So it's so important to recognize how is this going to influence those people,
Especially if they're like kiddos involved, or
100%.
people that you wouldn't want to have to see this, family members, parents. You don't want those to be their last memories.
Exactly. Yep. And that can be so. You want the victims to be left with the good memories and the positive of what that person, brought to their life.
Yeah.
And, especially in a certain point in the grief journey, you want to try to get to a point where those are the things you think about. You don't think about the bad stuff that happened. You think more about the great moments and the good moments. And so it's just another thing that they don't have to work through. They can get closer to working towards remembering the good.
Is there something that you would say to a media outlet or someone who's posting things, maybe a positive thing that they can say, or something that's not going to harm?
Yeah. I think just the thing with media outlets, and I think with a lot of jobs, I think people become disconnected from what they're doing, and it becomes the day in, day out. And I think for media, it's a lot about clicks and views. And I think they need to just go back to humanizing what they're writing and what they're posting. That this is not just a story. This is somebody's real life. This is somebody's worst moment. And I think that's just something to continue to consider if you're working in that type of environment. How is this going to impact the victims, and not just how many clicks am I going to get off of this? And I think we'd function a lot better. I think media too it's already so negative leaning, and can be really kind of depressing. I think maybe focusing, those posts in that media about ways to help or advocate, maybe discussing more about the victims within those posts and less about, the crash scene or the perpetrator, and talk more about ways of preventing the crime.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
helpful information. It's something, again, in my career that I've always struggled with seeing,
Yeah.
Working with families. It's just for them to have to relive it over and over through the news is just not something that is victim-centered, and we can do better.
Yep, for sure. Could definitely do better. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Victim Justice Unveiled, where truth is honored, voices are uplifted, and justice is reimagined. Justice isn't a verdict. It's a lived experience. If this episode moved you, share it. If it informed you, act on it. And if it reflected your truth, know that you're not alone. Together, we unveil a path toward change.